A 96-year-old woman who was a secretary in a Nazi concentration camp is in custody in Germany tonight. She was arrested after going on the run from her care home to avoid charges of complicity in the murder of more than 10,000 people.
When we think of the architects of terror during World War II, our minds often create images of men in uniform wielding power with iron fists. But buried deep within the historical records are the stories of female guards who matched, and sometimes surpassed, their male counterparts in cruelty. These women were far from being bystanders. They actively participated in the nightmare that was the concentration camps, committing atrocities that defy belief. These are the disgusting crimes of female guards of the concentration camps. Carmen Mori. Does knowing how sadistic and barbaric some people can be simply for pleasure bother you? Well, the story of Carmen Mori is one of inhumanity that happened during one of the darkest times in history. Mori initially lived a normal life and worked as a journalist for the Manchester Guardian, which is now known as The Guardian. From around the time Hitler came to power around 1937, she began to work as a journalist in Berlin and would produce newspaper articles. In between those years, at 1937, she became an undercover agent for the Gestapo, working under Bruno Sattler. She was tasked with spying and keeping an eye on a publisher in Zurich and was assigned to work for the Gestapo. In Paris, she would spy on a politician, collect so much information, and send it to Gestapo. In November 1938, she was arrested in France, and on 28 April 1940, she was sentenced to death. But she was pardoned on the 6th of June, 1940, because she offered to become a double spy for the French. Who does this situation remind you of? Mata Hari, right? Yes, Mori was given the nickname third-rated Mata Hari. Moving on, shortly afterward, Germany completed its invasion of France. But Mori had lost the trust of her superiors in the Gestapo. She was then arrested again, but this time by German authorities. However, she was released in 1941 and sent to Ravensbrück concentration women's camp, where she became a head of the block, Capo. Now this is where her story becomes juicy. The conditions at these camps were very harsh. Women were forced to conduct heavy and hard labor, and it was said that they didn't shoot these women to kill them. They were to work until they died. It was also in these camps that many medical experiments took place. A capo is the title given to a prisoner chosen by the Nazis to help control other prisoners. They opted for this option to cut down costs, so using prisoners to supervise other prisoners sounded like free labor. Different capos were given different duties, such as room leader and register. The room leader was to make sure the conditions inside the barrack, and the register would keep the record at roll call. This role put prisoners like Mori in a tough position. They could either help the Nazis and have a slightly better chance of surviving, or refuse and suffer along with everyone else. Mori chose to work closely with the Nazis. She was an ardent Nazi and was attracted to the Nazi way of life. So she felt that as she was working for the Gestapo, she deserved to be involved in the brutal and barbaric nature of the concentration camp. Mori was involved in overseeing the conditions and work that went on inside her block. She forced labor and was known to be a monster and described as sadomasochistic, psychopathic, sexually voracious, and one of the camp's most notorious capos. Many prisoners accused her of being very cruel. They said she was involved in punishing prisoners and turning in those who tried to resist or escape. She would beat these women with a belt and hose. She would also make them wear shorts or be completely naked. And sometimes she would pour cold water on them in a freezing weather condition, which could result in hypothermia and death. Worse of all, she would starve these women for days and sometimes throw a slice of bread on them, watching them fight for it. As if that's not bad enough, Mori one time told her fellow capo she enjoyed seeing the pain in their eyes when she made them eat their feces. Her actions made her one of the most feared capos in the camp. When World War II ended, Mori was arrested and put on trial for her actions at Ravensbrück. Many former prisoners testified against her, describing the terrible things she did and how she worked with the Nazis. She was accused of helping to hurt other prisoners and betraying those who were trying to fight back against the Nazis. Mori, on her part, defended herself by saying she only did what she had to do to survive, which is a common and empty excuse used by many who were in positions of power in the camps. But the court found her guilty of serious crimes against humanity, including violence and betrayal. She was sentenced to death by hanging for her actions. Before her execution could take place, Carmen Mori died by suicide in her cell on April 1947. Maria Mandel. No one dared look her in the eyes. Even well-trained male soldiers trembled at the sound of her footsteps. She was a Nazi girl who evoked fear and wickedness. Her name was Marie Mandel, nicknamed the Beast. Born in Austria in 1912, Mandel became one of the few women who held significant power within the Nazi camp system. Her father was a common shoemaker, and nothing is known of her mother. After graduating from elementary school, Mandel lived in Switzerland for a while, then served as a poster employee in Austria. She joined the Nazi Party at 1938. In September of that year, she moved to Munich, and by October, she began working in the concentration camp system. She started as a guard at Lichtenberg concentration camp. Then in May 1938, she transferred to Ravensbrück, a camp primarily for women. There, she received the position of senior supervisor. Her duties included conducting daily formation and giving tasks to prisoners. She also had the honor of punishing prisoners, which included merciless beating. In October 1942, she was moved to Auschwitz, one of the most infamous Nazi concentration camps located in Poland. At Auschwitz, Maria Mandel quickly rose through the ranks to become the head of the women's camp, a position known as Lagerführerin. As the camp's female commandant, she was in charge of all the female prisoners and oversaw the female guards. She had unlimited power over all the female prisoners. She could beat and humiliate these helpless victims anyhow she pleased, and it gave her sadistic pleasure. The prisoners did not dare to call her name. Instead, they whispered, "Beast" or "monster." Without a shadow of a doubt, she ordered instant death on the spot on anyone whose eyes dared to meet hers. When the head of camp ordered the approval of the list of prisoners to be liquidated, she sent more than 500,000 women and children to the gas chambers of Auschwitz. For entertainment, Mandel would choose Jewish prisoners as pets. She'd play with and dress up with the kids. And for adults, she'd make them do her chores and also walk around the camp. When she gets bored, she'll send them to the gas chambers. Mandel was also involved in the creation of the Auschwitz Women's Orchestra, which she used as a means of psychological torture. The orchestra was forced to play music while prisoners were led to the gas chambers, adding an inhuman layer of horror to the already terrifying experience. After World War II ended, Mandel fled to her native town Münzkirchen. Her father refused to help her hide, and she then sought her sister for refuge. However, Mandel was captured by American forces on August 10, 1945, and sent to Poland. She was put on trial for war crimes and crimes against humanity at the Auschwitz trial in Krakow in 1947. During the trial, many survivors testified about her brutal actions and the terror she inflicted on prisoners. She was found guilty of her crimes and sentenced to death. Maria Mandel was executed by hanging on January 24, 1948 in Krakow, Poland. Herta Oberhäuser. Imagine a doctor whose name still sends shivers down spines 76 years after her atrocities at the Nazi concentration camp. Her name was Herta Oberhäuser. She was born on the 15th of May, 1911, in Cologne, North Rhine-Westphalia, German Empire. In 1937, Oberhäuser got her medical degree in Bonn, specializing in dermatology. Soon thereafter, she joined the Nazi Party as an intern, and later served as a doctor for the League of German Girls. In 1942, she worked at Ravensbrück concentration camp. Here, she meticulously selected prisoners for her brutality and inhumane experiments, which aimed to test healthy human body limits under extreme conditions like fire burns, hypothermia, and frostbite. She deliberately inflicted wounds on prisoners and then infected them with bacteria to study the effects of different treatments. One witness, Stefania Latoka, remembers Oberhäuser refusing to provide water to many victims, and when she did, mixing it with vinegar. Oberhäuser's experiments led to the deaths of many. Those who survived these experiments were often left with severe injuries, mutilations, and disabilities for the rest of their life. After her capture at the end of the war, she claimed she was only helping her victims. Yes, she said it was a better way for them to escape execution. Oberhäuser's cruelty knew no bounds as she inflicted unimaginable suffering on people in the name of science. She was sentenced to 20 years in prison for her actions. However, like many war criminals of the time, she was released early. In 1952, after serving only 7 years, Oberhäuser tried to resume her medical career, but her past eventually caught up with her. Eventually, her medical license was revoked and she was barred from practicing medicine. She lived the rest of her life quietly till her death on the 24th of January, 1978. Koch. What shocked the world mostly was the fact that much of the horror was carried out by young women. Guards such as Johanna Bormann and Carmen Mori were sentenced to death for their horrific crimes, which included mass murder and violent acts upon prisoners. Not all these war crime women were killed for their war crimes. Ilse Koch, among others, got prison sentencing. As a child, Ilse was said to be polite and calm. She was born on the 22nd of September, 1906. At 15, she began studying accountancy and worked as a bookkeeper in Germany. At that time of the year, there was starvation in Germany because of the bad economy. After defeat during the First World War, she turned to the Nazis because she believed they would be the ones to help save Germany. So she became an active supporter of the party. Her thorough support led her to her husband, Karl Otto Koch. In 1936, Ilse got married to the commandant of Sachsenhausen concentration camp, Karl Otto Koch. At Sachsenhausen, Ilse worked as a guard and secretary. As a guard, Ilse's duties included overseeing the prisoners. While on duty, she was known for her cruelty. She used physical punishment and psychological abuse to maintain control over the prisoners. In August 1937, Karl Otto was assigned to build a new concentration camp in Buchenwald. At Buchenwald, she became known as the Witch. This title was because of her obsession with tattoos and horse riding. Ilse would ride around the Buchenwald looking for tattooed prisoners. When she found one, she sent them to their immediate death. But before they were killed and burned, she would carve out the part of their skin where the tattoo was located. She used to call these pieces of skin her trophies. She would then collect lampshades, book covers, as well as gloves and handbags, all made of tattooed human skin. That wasn't the only extent of her brutality. Despite having 3 of her children, Ilse hated pregnant women. She found them disgusting, and she would beat them with a whip that had pieces of a razor inserted. Someone who hated pregnant women would automatically hate children too. Ilse found pleasure in beating children. She would laugh loudly when they cried or when she saw them going to the gas chambers. That's not all. She was also a sexual deviant. She not only organized numerous inappropriate sexual activities with SS men and their wives, but also forced male prisoners to have forceful sexual acts with female prisoners in front of her. She also enjoyed walking around the camp, half naked or in skimpy clothes, to provoke prisoners to make eye contact with her. When they did, she would have the guards shoot them in the head. In 1941, the activities at Buchenwald concentration camp caught the attention of Josias Waldeck, the Heer SS and police leader for Weimar, who, in this position, had supervisory authority over Buchenwald concentration camp. Ilse was accused of the embezzlement of over 700,000 Reichsmarks and other war crimes. She was found guilty, but wasn't sentenced to death. She was sentenced to life imprisonment for her involvement in the atrocities committed at the camps. This verdict was due to the lack of solid evidence that she selected humans for extermination just to use their tattooed skin. But on the 1st of September, 1967, Ilse took her own life. She hung herself at Catch Women's Prison. Rumor has it that she had become delusional in prison and was often heard screaming and wailing at night. Herta Bote. During the Second World War, as the Allies and the Soviets progressed through German-occupied territories, They discovered a lot of concentration camps. As the Germans retreated, many of their prisoners died, and as for those alive, they were transferred to camps like Bergen-Belsen, which is closer to Germany. A significant number of SS guards, including Hertha Botha, accompanied the prisoners on what they termed death marches. Both, who had a violent and imposing figure at 6 feet 3 inches tall, was famous for her brutality in the concentration camps. Rumor has it that as a young girl, she joined the League of German Girls, which is a young group of girls established by the Nazis. These girls were taught how to raise children and do domestic house chores. Its purpose was to help raise and care for as many children as possible for Hitler's Reich. At age 17, Botha helped her father in his wood shop. Then, in September 1942, when she was 21, Botha became SS Aufseherin at Ravensbrück concentration camp. There in the camp, she was placed on a 4-week training course and then sent to the Stutthof camp near Danzig to work as an overseer. Apart from towering over other guards, Botha was known to wear civilian shoes most of the time. This might be because of her huge legs, or maybe she didn't like her boots. Apart from her shoes and height, at the camp, she became known as the sadist of Stutthof due to the brutal way she beat prisoners. Botha, like many others, was drawn into the power-intoxicated system and became part of the machinery that enforced policies. She would beat anybody with a stick or pistol when she caught them doing wrong. After being arrested and tried by the Allies in the Belsen trials, her cruel actions came to light. Botha was accused of shooting and killing prisoners at Belsen and Stutthof for stealing food. Remember, the conditions at Bergen-Belsen were already horrific, with thousands dying each week due to malnutrition and diseases like typhus. Botha didn't care and still inflicted pains on her victims. At the trial, she was accused of fatally beating female prisoners with a stick or rod during the trial. Witnesses testified about her cruelty. She was described as harsh and extremely abusive toward prisoners, although she denied these allegations. Despite being viewed as a brutal SS guard, she was not sentenced to death for her crimes. Due to insufficient evidence, she was sentenced to 10 years imprisonment and released early from prison on the 22nd of December 1951, which is approximately 5 years early. Subscribers Pick. Now it's time for our Subscribers Pick. This picture relates to all the instances of female guards' brutality in the Nazi concentration camps we've been talking about. The women on the left are examples of how these female guards are supposed to be, cheerful and lighthearted. However, the image on the right is a reminder of how the justice system treated some of these brutal female guards. The woman standing on the platform is about to face her punishment. Their inhuman actions in the concentration camps caused suffering to countless people, and we are glad it didn't go under the carpet, and they were held accountable for their actions. The disgusting crimes of female guards of the concentration camps. World War II. History is truly a time history we'll never forget. Tell us in the comments section what you think about this image. Anneliese Coleman. As a brutal camp warden, Anneliese Coleman became a call girl and a truck driver. Her name causes disgust and horror to those who experienced or heard of her deeds. Anneliese Coleman was a sinister figure in the history of Nazism. Born on the 1st of March 1921 in Hamburg, Germany, Anneliese Coleman joined the Nazi Party as a young woman at the outbreak of World War II. In 1944, Coleman volunteered to become a guard in the concentration camp system and served as an SS overseer at Neuengamme concentration camp near Hamburg. Her responsibilities included overseeing the daily work and lives of the prisoners who were forced to labor under appalling conditions. Like other women who had the taste of power, she was known to be physically abusive toward the prisoners under her watch. She was often seen with a whip to punish those who did not meet the camp's strict demands. In one instance, she was accused of using her whip to beat female prisoners just because she wanted to instill fear and maintain control. And yes, they could see the pleasure it gave her. At the end of the war, when the military liberated the concentration camps, Anneliese Coleman tried to escape by dressing as a male prisoner. But fate caught up with her as surviving prisoners recognized her and handed her to soldiers. She was arrested and was found guilty of repeatedly whipping inmates, including pregnant women, across the face, kicking until they lost consciousness, condemning at least one female prisoner to the punishment of 30 lashes for a piece of stolen bread, and sexually exploiting younger women. She was sentenced to only 2 years in prison. This is due to her short service in the SS and her defense claim that she did not kill anyone. She moved to West Berlin in 1965. After her release, she worked as a call girl and a truck driver. Then eventually, she took a job as a cook in a hospital and died there on the 17th of September, 1977, at the age of 56. Johanna Bormann. This calm and smallish-looking lady was one of the most brutal concentration camp guards in World War II history. Johanna Bormann was known as the woman with the dogs, who took sadistic pleasure in setting her wolfhounds on prisoners to tear them to pieces. Like other women previously mentioned, her actions and choices made her one of the many women who were involved in the brutal treatment of prisoners in these camps. Bormann was born on the 10th of September, 1893, in Germany. Before the war broke out, she worked as a domestic servant. But in the year 1938, Bormann joined the SS, which is a paramilitary organization under Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party. Bormann first went into a concentration camp found in Saxony. This camp, in particular, was one of the first to be constructed by the Nazis. When the prisoners were transferred to the newly opened Ravensbrück concentration camp, the camp closed. In 1942, Bormann was transferred to Auschwitz-Birkenau, which is one of the most notorious concentration camps located in Poland. As a guard, Bormann was known for her cruelty. She was indeed very vicious. Although she had a small body size, she was small but mighty in her evil treatment of prisoners. She often worked with dogs, which she used to terrorize and attack prisoners. Her nickname was Weasel, or the Woman with Dogs. Survivors of Auschwitz recalled how she would send her dogs after the women and children, causing terrible injuries and fear. On one occasion, Bormann noticed a prisoner taking something angrily. She grabbed her by her hair and threw her to her dog, which bit her and caused injury so great that there was a pool of blood. When the doctor came to examine her, she was motionless. Eventually, she was sent to the gas chambers to be killed. Her dog also attacked another woman badly. This attack sent her hospitalized for 6 weeks. Fast forward to late 1944, Johanna Bormann, along with other camp guards, was arrested by the British. She was put on trial with many former camp staff members, who were judged for their crimes. During the trial, witnesses testified about Bormann's cruelty and the brutal actions she took against the prisoners. These included detailed descriptions of occasions where she let her dog attack prisoners and her general harsh behavior. Johanna Bormann was found guilty of all war crimes and charged against her role in the concentration camps. The court sentenced her to death for her actions. On the 13th of December, 1945, she was executed by hanging at Hamelin prison in Germany. She was 52 years old, weak, and trembling at the time of her death. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.